Hey there, I'm Sarita, and you're about to experience the modern approach to well-being where you get to establish the best and most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. I'm on a mission to help you declutter energy and reclaim your power so you can be a magnet to what you desire. If you're looking for the optimal blend of mindset and healing, you're in the right place. My goal in this podcast is to share tools, resources, and practices that will help you along your healing journey. I'm so excited to be here with you today, so welcome to Back to Here with Sarita. Let's get started. Hello, beautiful soul, and welcome to Back to Here with Sarita, the new Manifesting Paradigm podcast. It is very good to be back. If you have missed me, I want to say it is really good to be present here again on a podcast episode. This is the last episode of the year. And so the old version of me, if you've been following the episodes for a while now, you'll know that the last one that I personally dropped was sometime at the end of October. And then at the beginning of November, I had a guest that came on and we talked about manifesting. And since then, I've taken a sacred pause from doing anything podcast oriented. So the old version of me would definitely apologize and sit here and say, I'm sorry for taking a long time to get back to recording. However, the new version of me just acknowledges that I've been on a sacred pause, and then also that this time frame while I've been on a sacred pause has been because I've been honoring my body, honoring my rhythms, which is exactly what I teach within this podcast along with my coaching. So very important for me not to completely head to burnout. Also, the time period that I was on a sacred pause was actually integration period for me. As you've been following me on Sarita Wellness on my social media and here on my podcast, you know that I've been a digital nomad now for over 6 months. I believe my 6-month mark was at the end of October. So I'm well into my second half of being a completely nomadic person who doesn't have a home base, essentially, and lives out of my car, not in my car, but I live out of my car. So all the essentials are in my car. And I have been traveling around the United States, essentially manifesting my way across the United States, using my intuition and quite literally putting into practice 111% everything. And I mean everything that I've learned over the last few years when it comes to manifesting. And so you can follow my journey on Sarita Wellness, both on TikTok, along with Facebook and on Instagram. And so instead of coming back in 2026 and creating a new episode, I decided that what better time to come back at the end of the year and just start reflecting on 2025, especially being a childless Latina digital nomad manifesting her way across the United States, sharing a few of my top lessons along with the way that manifesting is actually changing. And I've been talking about this. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you'll know that I've been saying how our manifestation process is changing. It was on the brink of changing last year around, I believe, November-ish. And now it is fully transforming. 2025, as you know, is the year of the snake. It's the year of completion. And so as we enter into 2026, our way of manifesting is changing with the speed of how things are transitioning in our society. So that is exactly what I will be sharing in this episode, will be how manifesting is changing for us as a society and as an individual. I will be also sharing with you my nomad life and how initiation through my nomadic lifestyle gives me agency to be able to talk about this kind of thing. And also I'll be sharing with you my 3 top lessons while being a digital nomad, utilizing manifestation every single moment. And I'll be sharing with you as well what will be to come in 2026, not only from Sarita Wellness, but also, just like I said, when it comes to manifesting. So just a little mini life update. Where I am right now is in Philadelphia. I have found a beautiful place to stay here, doing a plant sit. As you can see, there's some plants behind me. This whole entire home is just filled with plants. It's absolutely beautiful. It's a 6-week stay, so it definitely gives me opportune time to really reflect and allow myself to, again, integrate as we are reflecting on the new year that's coming up and reflecting on the year that's passed, and also breaking some of those cycles and breaking the things so I don't carry them into 2026. Very excited to share with you this episode. Let's go ahead and dive in. So, honest question, how was your 2025? And for most people who answer this question, they just roll their eyes and sigh and say, oh my gosh, it was such a doozy. It was such a year. And I truly believe that across the board for a lot of people. Many people were having things come to conclusion, having things break off, having things end, all these different cycles just coming to closure. And I really feel that the numerology aspect of 2025 really played in a lot of people's lives. It definitely played in mine as I commenced a new journey, yet also broke off a old lifestyle, an old way of being, an old identity, an old city that I lived in, right? Leaving San Diego after 20 some years. So 2025 was the year of the snake and all about shedding, letting go. And as we go into 2026, it is the year of the horse. So horses, as you know, are top speed. So let's talk about how manifesting is actually changing. I brought this up over a year ago, and that actually inspired the tagline of this podcast. If you remember when I added it on, it's been a little over a year, the new manifesting paradigm podcast, right? And so the new manifesting paradigm is essentially the change in which we are manifesting things into our reality. For me, 2025 was not a travel year. It essentially was a field study in deconditioning from the matrix. So when I talk about that, it's essentially the matrix to me, and everybody has a different translation for the matrix. For the matrix, for me, is this built up system where we are required to work really hard in order to get a payoff for something. We've been trained like this, and I speak from the United States society. And this is where I was raised, right, in the United States. And so this westernized culture belief that if I just work hard enough, maybe I will be able to get a piece of the pie, right? And so this isn't something that is new to the United States, right, with technology. This is something that's actually been ingrained in our society for a long time. And I really do believe that colonization has a really big impact in that, especially when it comes to being a person of color, as we were utilized as the workforce to help pay off debt, to help pay off, to expedite the riches of the selected few, right? The colonizers and the people that were colonizing us, right? So we've had generations and generations of this belief of work hard, work really hard. And so again, with the American dream, that is also part of the aspect of the American dream, essentially, is to work hard. If we can work hard enough, blood, sweat, and tears, right? You've heard that expression. Maybe somehow we can get a piece of the pie. And so this is how I'm different as a manifestation coach. I'm teaching around the new manifesting paradigm. I don't teach manifestation from books. I actually teach manifestation from what my nervous system has survived, integrated, and stabilized. And so these last 6 months being a digital nomad, learning to decondition in the most unique way while being on the road, while trusting the process. It was different when I was living in San Diego. I was living a life where I would be very routine based, which is very important for me as well to keep up these routines and keep some formality in the way so I don't go crazy, right? Having some level of boundaries is very, very important to me. However, when I was doing a very, I would say, mundane type of living where I was waking up, reporting to work, going back and doing, the cyclical cycle, right, every single day. And maybe on the weekends it was a little bit different. It didn't feel like I could fully utilize the teachings of manifesting to its most potent degree, if that makes sense. So when I decided to leave San Diego in May, putting everything that I learned in the manifesting world over the last few years. And if you remember, I really started diving into manifesting around 2020 during COVID. I was introduced to it a while back, but it was 2020 when I really dove in deep to it, started putting it into practice and utilizing everything that I took, everything that I learned, right, from my own personal experience and then also from books, podcasts, coaching programs, etc., and putting it into real time, effected play on the playground, on the playing field of life, manifesting every single day with intention, listening to my intuition, really putting into effect everything that I had learned. I definitely have evolved as a manifestation teacher. And so when I say that I've been living manifestation in motion, that's exactly what I'm referring to. I learned manifestation from the old paradigm, right? So it was taking these ideas of working really hard. I worked in corporate for a number of years, quite a few years. And so, of course, I have this conditioning as a person of color living in the United States as well, working really hard. I was taught if I work hard, then I could get a really good grade. If I put a lot of effort into something, I'm going to get better at it, right? And so I've taken that mindset, that thinking, and integrated it into the manifestation and mindset world. If I only put in effort and push harder and create more of more, essentially create more and do more, then the equation will be I receive more. But that's where it's different when it comes to manifesting, is it's not exactly like that. More isn't necessarily better. Actually, less is better. I can get into all of that in another episode, but essentially the old manifesting paradigm is this thinking of if we put more effort into something, then there will be a bigger payoff. And so this is the conditioning that I realized that I had within my manifesting communities, within my manifesting teachings, within my own personal manifesting practices. When I started becoming nomadic and integrating into that lifestyle as a nomad, so much of my foundation was taken away, right? I didn't have a home base. I didn't have a grocery store that I would go to on the regular to buy groceries. I didn't have the regular community of friends, right? So a lot of things were just not the stabilized foundation that I had. I had to create safety and foundation within myself. Luckily, I had already done a lot of that in my healing journey. And again, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I've been on a massive healing journey, especially since my breakup back in 2021. Becoming a digital nomad really put front and center the importance of deconditioning from all the things that I thought were reality, that I thought that were true, that I thought would be supportive to me. And so, like I said, creating safety within the body was something imperative that I had already done, but it was exponentially important as I commenced my nomadic lifestyle to create that. And so it was this thing happening in tandem where I was creating more safety and boundaries for myself, creating more of a spiritual practice for myself, creating a foundation that would support me wherever I went, and deconditioning, letting go, releasing, shedding, like I said, year 9, going through all the things that I thought were imperative for me when it came to manifesting and my manifesting process. And so leaning into the new manifesting paradigm, which essentially is about frequency. It's not about pushing harder and using willpower to get something that you want. We have been taught this, and even in these mindset communities, which to me are very masculine based, and there's definitely a time and place for that. A lot of it has come from sports, right? And a lot of it's come from business. What are the two, what from those two particular types of places, right? Those are male dominated. So it makes sense that the self help books and a lot of the rhetoric around mindset when it comes to learning around mindset has come from this very masculine oriented mindset, willpower, push, logic, make things happen. Where learning now to decondition from this very masculine oriented society that we have, that I have gone through this process when leaving a corporate job where I had to report to an office and work in a cubicle back in 2019, I went through a very immense deconditioning of my masculine. And through that, I started to discover my feminine. But that was a whole journey in itself. And learning to lean more into my intuition and my downloads and trusting the process and trusting my intuitive hits to create, and learning how to work those two energies together has been a huge, huge, huge process. And so taking that essentially onto the playing field of life in this last year, in this last 6 months, has been something that has been so unique in this process. And so the new manifesting paradigm, I've been saying this for quite some time, is about frequency. It's about how we approach things on an energetic level. And that is the way of the future of manifesting. There's still a lot of books out there. There's still a lot of rhetoric out there. If you open up TikTok, if you open up YouTube, yes, there are people talking about the subconscious mind and talking about mindset. And yes, there are people talking about the subconscious, the nervous system. However, when it comes to the new manifesting paradigm, the way that we manifest is changing. The top down structures of how we have viewed life over the last millennia is really starting to come to conclusion. And again, I'm very interested to see how this all is going to become and evolve as we go into this next year, 2026, which is a year one. And like I said, it is the year of the horse, and horses run really fast. So we will see what happens. So, again, to recap, the old manifesting paradigm essentially is about mindset only, about hustling, about this hustle culture, hustle coding, disconnected from the body, history of systems that we've learned over and over again, year after year, century after century. Whereas the new manifesting paradigm is going to be all about the nervous system and our frequency level. I've learned so much being a digital nomad, and I want to say that I don't want to sugarcoat nomadic life by any means. I really truly believe that TikTok and YouTube do a really great job. Influencers do a really great job of romanticizing nomad life, where there is a lot of freedom to be able to go where you want to. It's carefree. There is a level of independence that I have, which is amazing, especially being childless and being able to move around a lot. But I do want to hone in some things that I truly believe that have been a part of my journey, that have helped me come to this place where I can speak with such more authority when it comes to the new manifesting paradigm. Is that living out of one vehicle is actually very, very limiting. There's a lot of spatial limitation when it comes to living out of one vehicle. Can you imagine taking everything that you own, putting literally the essentials into one vehicle and living like that for 1 year? Not to mention, I am unloading and reloading constantly. I am sleeping in new beds all the time. I'm in new environments all the time. I'm in people's homes all the time, which means there's a lot of different energies happening as I become more spiritual, as I become more evolved, I realize boundaries are really imperative. And not just boundaries with like family members, but I'm talking about boundaries when it comes to entering into someone's home and the requirements to stay there and the agreements and energy when you walk into somebody's home. There have been homes that I've stayed in where I can essentially feel as I walk in the complete sadness and depression. Those are not homes I necessarily want to stay in for a very long period of time, right? Especially traveling as a woman of color solo across the United States. I do want to say over the last 6 months, there have been multiple times that I have really been using a lot more discernment in where I go because of the political climate in the United States. So, yes, nomad life is very free and very liberating. However, there are a lot of limitations within it. And the imperativeness, if that's a word, to make sure that I am very, very safe using discernment, but also creating safety within my body has been so important along this travels. What I considered safe back in San Diego, where I refined my nervous system for the environment that I had there, definitely transitioned and changed as I became a nomad. So there was constant need for regulating work. Finding truth within my somatic practices was very important, has been very important. Even though I am a nomad, freedom is not absent of structure, right? I was saying how I created structure back in my life when I had a very cyclical cycle of waking up, going to work out, eating, meals, preparing meals in the same home and shopping at the same places and really doing a lot of the repetition, where I do have a lot of repetition on my nomad life, but because I create it, the repetition actually creates a foundation for me for structure. Freedom is actually choosing structure that honors the body, which is a lot of the importance of the new manifesting paradigm, is honoring the body, honoring the rhythms, which is the reason why I took that 6-some-week sacred pause from this podcast, because I was honoring the structure that my body needed. So going back to the experience of being a woman of color, a Latina, who is a nomad living everywhere in the United States, right? And depending on political culture in certain places, there are places that, of course, I need to use some more discernment when it comes to navigating life. And so this aspect of me has always been with me as being a person of color, a woman of color. It's not something that I could ignore ever. And so in spaces where I go, it's something that I notice, and it's not something that's unique to me. This is something that occurs within a lot of people that identify as a person of color. Is they'll go into spaces and they will take note of the other people that may look like them. And so that being said, there are communities in which we are in the minority. And I noticed back in 2021, when I really started on my personal development journey and healing journey and manifestation journey, a lot of the communities, I felt like not only were we in minority, was I in minority, but also a lot of the spaces were stripped of cultural context. Unless I was in specifically a community that was centered or focused around my own culture, being Latina, most likely I would not get that in different arenas. And oftentimes I noticed, and I did a episode on this, and I'll have this in the show notes because I can't remember the exact episode that I shared this on, but I shared how realizing that I'm not the only person who's experienced this as being in spaces where I feel like my culture and the way that my background is bypassed. I know it's not done intentionally in a way to hurt, But oftentimes in spiritual communities, in mindset communities, there's lack of honoring any type of lineage, unless, again, I was with communities where we were specifically talking about that. But even in those communities, oftentimes I felt like the facilitator or the leader would shy away from talking about those type of things. And oftentimes in these communities, I was told to a certain effect, not with these exact words, but told to a certain effect or to just think positive. And I find that this is actually very damaging, or I was downplayed in what I wanted to bring up when I was bypassed with certain mindset approaches to mindset my way out of a experience of being somebody that doesn't look like the masses and who is a minority. I felt like I was not only bypassed, but also I felt unseen. And when that circumstance happens, it's very damaging to somebody's emotions and experience. And also, from my own personal experience, I know that group or that facilitator didn't intentionally create a unsafe space for me, right? It wasn't something they were trying to do. But when that circumstance happens, unfortunately, for somebody like me, it can feel unsafe in the body. And so, why does this all matter now that I'm talking about these things, my own personal experience as being a nomad, being a Latina nomad, looking the way that I do, being a solo traveler, a woman, right? And also the new manifesting paradigm. How does this all matter? Why does this all come together? Bringing this together as being a Latina digital nomad, looking the way that I do, using discernment, my experience of feeling like certain spaces where my cultural experience was being bypassed. Why does this all matter going into 2026? Well, 2025 again was about releasing old identities, old ways of being, old viewpoints, old perspectives. And as we navigate into 2026, I truly believe that our nervous system is going to be, or already is starting to be, the new currency. This new manifesting approach will be nervous system led, identity based, and trauma informed, and collectively aware. And that's where I come in as a manifestation coach, because I'm already living and breathing this experience, navigating into all these different spaces, being a Latina, being a person of color, traveling around the United States solo, having my own personal experience as we go in, seeing how my own personal experience, I've been deconstructing from the old manifesting paradigm, utilizing the new manifesting paradigm, essentially, right? The nervous system, and utilizing the power of my frequency to manifest versus the old way of manifesting, which is the mindset and the hustle and the try harder. I'm here living and breathing this experience day by day. And what I find is this is going to be imperative for us as we move forward into 2026. And to add to that, I want to share with you the three top lessons, I should say, that I've learned in the last 6 months being a digital nomad, working from anywhere. And the top one I would say is home is a regulated nervous system. I was just talking about this, the importance and the imperativeness of the safety of home. I realized my home base for so long was considered this geographical location, this house that I lived in, the place that I paid for electricity and cooked my meals. And then the version of home started to really change as I left San Diego, and home became myself. home became my internal state and safety. I started to recognize the importance of body based regulation to be able to feel safe at home as I navigated into new spaces, into new homes, and to have that feeling of conviction of safety within my body. The more I integrated within my journey as a nomad, the more I realized not only was safety important in the body to be able to navigate into new homes and new spaces, but to feel safer in the body, it was actually easier, with more ease, I should say, to intentionally manifest with flow and ease than before, when I was not necessarily as regulated and grounded in my body, being stationary in one place. Again, this is not something that I'm saying everybody needs to be a nomad to be able to feel regulated. That's not the case. For me, it was just the change and the shift that occurred for me, and realizing the importance of the safety within the body. Before I understood it logically, if that makes sense. I understood it logically, the importance of feeling safe in the body and understanding that. And I can manifest with more ease when I do feel safe in the body to receive, right? I understood that logically and a conceptual level. But becoming a nomad, it started integrating in such a deeper place into my nervous system and into my DNA and into my energy field, that I realized that I could essentially manifest, intentionally manifest things like money, places to stay, and receiving things without even really putting a lot of the old manifesting paradigm concepts of push harder, work harder, try harder, sure, willpower, that I could just manifest something with such ease because I had created this safety within my body and replace what I considered a home becoming home as my regulated nervous system. Lesson two, I shared this a little bit earlier, that freedom requires boundaries. The more I realize boundaries are not only essential, but they're imperative and required. This really came to light while I was, yes, in San Diego with like friends and things like that, and especially when I was dating. But it really came to light for me while I've been nomadic, because I realized in energetically staying in new people's homes, or staying in people's homes, it's new to me. Staying in people's homes, I had to do the energetic clearing of a home. And that's through sage, that's through playing high vibe music, that's frequency music, which I absolutely love. That's saying a prayer, calling in my guides, all the things to be able to clear a home of its space and make it mine for the time, right? And then also, it really became clear to me how freedom requires boundaries, because I was in St. Louis, Missouri for about 6 weeks on my nomadic travels. I was raised in St. Louis and my family still resides in St. Louis. And so my episode that I released at the end of, I believe, October, I had mentioned how I surprised my family. They didn't know that I was coming. And I essentially didn't have any plans, made with them until we sat down and made plans while I was there. And it was very interesting because being back in St. Louis, there was a lot of reverting back to old tendencies. It had to do with being with family, which I had not been with my physical family for 10 years. So being back with my family, and again, 10 years ago, I was not on the healing journey that I am now. I was still navigating, not sleeping very well. I was an insomniac. I was pretty burnt out. It was kind of the beginning of my relationship. When I was in that 8 year relationship, I was still trying to figure out my identity in that. And so there was just a lot of kind of chaos. And I know at that time I was triggered a lot more easily. There was just a lot more movement with like anger and frustration and trauma. And so a lot of healing has been done over the last 10 some years for me. And so going back to my hometown and seeing old friends and seeing family members, it was very interesting how that really put that lesson front and center, how boundaries were really necessary in honoring my own personal rhythms. I had cycles that I had created for myself, or I have created for myself on this nomadic lifestyle. And again, it's very imperative for me for my own well being. And while I was in St. Louis, it was interesting how oftentimes I would break trust with myself in the way where I wanted to appease or to not rock the boat when it came to certain family members and wanting to spend time with them. And so it's very interesting how a lot of times I ended up noticing how I broke those patterns of behavior. And what ended up coming forth for me was a lot of chaos. And I'm not saying like chaos as in there are arguments and things like that. Everything was actually very harmonious when it came to spending time with family. I just noticed with myself, there were certain things that I was breaking away from. And of course, this is what is important when it comes to our personal journeys, as it's okay for us to do these things. And it's important to understand why we did something and make sure that going forward, we're aware of what that thing is. So we don't not necessarily do it again and repeat the mistake, but also are aware that it's something that will keep us from maybe the goal or the desired outcome. And for me, it was the foundation, right? Freedom requires some level of boundaries. I had a breaking point. I believe there was actually two breaking points I had. And our body speaks to us. As we know, when we have tightness and exhaustion in the body or other bodily symptoms, it is often based on some emotional thing that we're keeping locked up or not processing. And for me, it was two instances that occurred. On the night of Halloween, I was so ecstatic about going out and having a good time, spending time with my niece and doing trick or treating. And all of a sudden, I felt this onset of fatigue that I don't think I have felt really ever before. And it came on so strong that I felt like I was weak in the knees and I just wanted to collapse. And so I ended up honoring myself and just saying, and I drew the boundary and I said, nope, I'm not doing anything. And I literally went to bed at like 8 o'clock at night. And it was just so mind blowing to me how my body was speaking to me so loudly, yet it had been speaking to me for those last few weeks. The exhaustion was still there, but I still kept pushing. I still kept trying to go to the gym and trying to put forth effort to spend time with family, trying to put in effort towards these other things, my business and the podcast. And then my body just broke down. It literally broke down. And it wasn't that much later that it was about a week later or so, I was doing my morning practice with my medicine sisters. And I ended up doing a hape session, which is tobacco. I've talked about this in my combo episode that I practice doing hape on the regular. And during that particular moment when I was with my medicine sisters, burst into tears. And I realized in that moment how far away I had come from being present. A lot of the time that I had spent in St. Louis, for some reason, I was not present. There was so much shame moving through me that I was frustrated that I pride myself being this unique person, or I shouldn't even say unique, but being this person who speaks about the body and honoring the body and the rhythms and coming back to here and the breath and breath work and being present and the self trust and the self love. And here I was emulating a person that couldn't even be present. And that even in that moment, sitting with Hape in that meditation, I was fidgety and I could not be present. And I just burst into tears and I noticed, wow, this whole entire time while I've been in the city that I grew up in, I was escaping. I was using escapism to get into these old patterns of behavior, to not be present with myself. And it wasn't that I didn't have time, because you can always make time for the things that are important. I wasn't honoring the importance of myself, right? I was out there appeasing and falling back into old patterns of wanting to spend time with the family because I thought I had limited time and all these things. And just trying to work with other people's schedules. It was challenging, right? When you visit a place you haven't seen for a long time, it's very challenging. What I didn't do was honor myself. I was not honoring my own boundaries. I wasn't honoring my own rhythms. And so I had these two breakdown moments. And I realized the importance that freedom does require boundaries. It requires a place where we are creating a system to not escape from. Because when we are creating freedom without boundaries, we're essentially creating a system that is the one that we're trying to escape in the first place. That's what it comes down to. And so St. Louis really taught me that the importance of freedom requires boundaries. I would say the last lesson that I've learned, the third biggest lesson that I've learned while being a nomad, is trust is built through repetition, not faith. And faith is something very interesting. I grew up semi Christian. I will definitely do a podcast episode about this because being around in St. Louis, a lot of the people that I grew up with, I grew up in the religion Christian Science. Essentially, the basis of Christian Science is really centralized around healing. There's a lot more I can say about that. And again, I'll do an episode all about the religion I grew up in. I really believe it's a challenge to have complete blind faith with certain things. We can have it. It's something that's taught definitely within Christianity. It's taught in different religions, having faith. Sometimes it isn't considered or called faith, but just having some level of trust within a higher power, or the higher evolvement and unfoldment of things. And it is very challenging just to have blind faith. I say that from personal experience. Nomadic life has really taught me to trust, and trust is actually built through practice, through repetition, through self keeping and honoring limits and honoring my intuition. It's built through doing things over and over again. Repetition is very, very important. Sometimes repetition can become mundane, like I was talking about when I was living back in San Diego and having a very repetitive lifestyle, and it became mundane because I wasn't going outside the boundaries or creating some level of something different for myself. When entering into nomadic lifestyle, it definitely was something a lot different. But I truly believe that my relationship with my intuition, my relationship with God, source, universe, higher power, whatever you want to call it, is done through a repetitive nature. Leaning into that, I already have had developed a relationship with higher power, source, God, universe, my guides, all those things. I had developed a relationship, but I felt like I was at kind of the 5-pound dumbbell. Where I was like, okay, I'm aware of this. I know it exists. I can pick it up. I can do a little bicep curve, and that's about it. That's my relationship. That's the extent of it. And then jumping into nomad life, it really put on the fast forward, 80 miles per hour. You got to trust, or you're not going to, essentially, you're going to fail. And I don't mean fail in a traditional way, but I'm saying it's either or, right? You either get on board or you don't do this lifestyle. And so I realized it was through these micro decisions on where to stay, where to grocery shop, where to get car maintenance, when to get car maintenance, driving certain distances, creating new, connections with people, all these different things. I learned that these micro decisions that I made and trusting my intuition, right? Remember I was saying at the beginning how when I left my corporate job, there was this deep deconditioning that I had to learn to not lean so heavily on my mindset so much, on my mind and my logical thinking, just learning to start to trust the intuitive, process. We don't get taught that kind of thing in school. We don't get taught those things in society unless you go into a container that has to do with intuition, or your, spiritual practices have to do with intuition. I even feel like sometimes within my Christian upbringing, my intuition was not a part of the process. Yes, it was learning to trust God's source. God's source universe had the answers. I was more of this measly little person that was at the whim of whatever God's source universe wants, right? And so I never felt like I had so much agency or power when it came to my intuitive process. Although I really do feel like I've had an intuitive part of me for a long time. And a lot of people feel this way, especially people that are in this healing journey, learning how to decondition, right? From this matrix that we've been taught, the work hard to willpower our way through things. Essentially, we've got it all wrong. It's about yes, what makes us unique as humans is our logic, is our brain, is our evolved brain, is our mammalian brain. We are the most evolved mammals out there. We really are. And that's the beauty of it. And we are also spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings in a physical body. That's what I truly believe. And that being said, we don't get taught to honor our intuition, even though so many of us have it. And a lot of us are tapped in. And I've been tapped in for a long time, yet I had society, yet I had the people who were taking care of me, schooling, all that stuff. I learned to push that down, to not honor that, to think of it as something that is whimsical, that's not stable. I learned that it's not something to be trusted. Yeah, gut instinct maybe, but not necessarily intuition and intuitive downloads. I'm a moon in Pisces, so it's something that I have been intuitive. I feel heavily other people's emotions. I can sense things sometimes before they happen. And so I realized through this nomad lifestyle how important micro decisions that I was making really built up this muscle of trust, but it also built up this muscle of validation, my self-validation, and choosing discernment in certain circumstances, right? The trust and the micro decisions and all that over this need to perform, which is something that I personally have been deconditioning from as well, my inner performer. And so making these micro decisions and these lessons is I learned to embody and practice that the universe actually responds to my consistency in my intuitive process versus me being desperate, old manifesting paradigm. Desperate, sure, willpower. Let's make this happen. Like, put more effort into it. It's hard. It's hard. Let's make it harder. Universe, God's source does not respond to that. Energy is constantly flowing. And when we are utilizing sheer willpower, we're actually blocking our ability to manifest with ease. And so learning how to develop, again, it's been through these micro decisions and micro moments that I've had along my journey that the imperativeness or the importance that trust is actually built through repetition and not just completely blind faith. Those are the top 3 lessons that I personally have learned over the year 2025. I have definitely learned a lot of lessons in general. If you want to go to Sarita Wellness at TikTok or on Instagram or Facebook, I've shared quite a few lessons. I believe I shared the top 5 lessons I learned in 90 days and the next 5 lessons I learned in 90 days or the second 90 days. But this is more a kind of reflection on the full 6 months that I've had as a digital nomad, manifesting my way across the United States. I do share a lot of that on my social media, so make sure to follow me there. Now, what is coming forth for 2026? I was going to do a completely different podcast episode, but just in a nutshell, I wanted to share with you, yes, 2025 is the year of endings and completions and really not carrying certain beliefs and thinkings and patterns into 2026, especially since it's going to be a year 1. And for me, how that has been showing up has been being really scared and fearful about bringing up certain things when it comes to my manifestation experience. I shared in this episode, and I believe I really introduced a lot of those thinkings into an episode that I did. And I'll have that in the show notes because I don't necessarily remember what the actual episode name and the number is. But it's a very powerful episode when I started to really think about when I started leaning into my background, into my culture, into who I am as a person, right? And not just as a spiritual being, but also as somebody reclaiming her heritage. And I believe this was after I went to El Salvador. I had traveled back to El Salvador back in April of last year. And I believe the episode was shortly after that. Since then, I've been starting to really think about the impact of being a person of color and manifesting. And I brought that into light into an episode back in the end of October. I was talking about the paradox of force and how that's really impacting us as people of color, the impact of the perception that if we use sheer willpower to make things happen, in fact, it does not essentially work in our favor. It works against us. And so since then, I've been really mulling over, and especially being a person of color navigating around the United States and certain political climates, and realizing that different places have different energies, different people think different things. Very scared for a while, I would say, to intertwine the two worlds that I'm very, very passionate about, my activism and my spirituality. And I was scared because I thought I would come across too political. I was scared that I would come across not political enough. I was realizing that I was boxing myself in as being a manifestation coach and really trying to appease to the masses, especially when I was coaching one-on-one. I was really taking on, I had some amazing, beautiful clients, and I'm so grateful for them. And at the same time, I felt like for me that I was sharing manifestation in a very watered down way. It was because had this underlying fear that who would listen to me when it came to speaking about manifesting from the space of being a woman of color. And I thought, I'm just going to have a lot of people that are going to stop listening to the podcast and not want to hear what I have to say. I've been playing around with it on my TikTok and kind of thinking about ways in which I can start to share this message. And I was feeling like that I would alienate myself or cancel myself for some reason when I started talking about the intertwining of these two very important aspects of my journey, which is being a person of color and my spirituality, and bringing those things together. And like I mentioned this in this episode, I've been through personal experiences where I have been bypassed, right? And again, it wasn't the intention of the instructor or the facilitator, and it was something that I've experienced. And it's made me realize that not only have I experienced this, there are other people that have experienced this. I've noticed that with other people, and just several other people in my circle and people that I very well respect, when they do reclaim, acknowledge their cultural and identity, right? Their culture is part of their identity power, the way that they're able to construct their life and reconstruct their life comes so much more at ease. And so I thought there's something here. I really want to pivot my business to talk a lot more about this. I've talked about deconditioning and decolonizing from the matrix as a nomad a lot on my social media. And I'm very happy that I'm talking more about this. And so I've been in this work now for long enough to know that there is a need for this. And again, my fear is that I have been hiding from you. I've been hiding essentially the parts of me that have been wanting to speak up about this, that have been wanting to share how manifestation communities have heavily bypassed this particular subject. And there are people that are in spiritual communities that are of color, and I'm not pinpointing or pointing fingers or saying this, that are, and maybe it's just not something that they think about in in respect to their work that they want to share. I'm sure it's something that they think about because being a person of an ethnic origin or a culture or an identity, it's not something you can just ignore, right? It's something that's who you are. My experience has been being in these spaces, if there is somebody that I identify with that is of maybe the same background or even a person of color, oftentimes they shy away from even speaking about those things. There are several people, several influencers, several coaches that are speaking about this, which I'm really, really grateful for. And there's more of a need. My goal is to bring these two worlds together and teach how sovereignty, our own identity sovereignty, is the new spiritual goal. And that reclaiming our agency, reclaiming our voice, reclaiming our nervous system, especially feeling like we're underrepresented, it will help to regulate not only our nervous system, but create a ripple effect to the masses when it comes to normalizing our experience. I'm so grateful for social media because there have been more conversations around being a person of color or having a certain type of sexual orientation or having certain identities that aren't of the mainstream or of the quote unquote norm. I'm so grateful for social media for that reason. And so going forward, I've chosen that I am colliding these two massively important aspects of me. Going forward, Sarita Wellness will center on sovereignty, how to utilize manifestation as a tool for liberation and not escapism. A lot of times I've seen on social media, TikTok, again, we're looking for quick fix manifestation hacks to be able to manifest something. And a lot of it comes from scarcity. Unfortunately, scarcity is something that is intertwined in a lot of our DNAs as people of color. And it's not just from our personal upbringing, it's through ancestry, it's through lineage. And these aspects are areas that are not necessarily talked about in manifestation communities. They're doing a lot of like cookie cutter, surface level type of work. And it's beautiful and it's amazing. Even the most potent manifestation programs that I've been through are powerful, yet there's that one component that feels like it's missing. And maybe because the person that is teaching it doesn't believe that's important or doesn't even think about that as being something as part of the program, importance of the program, or maybe they bring somebody in just for that, maybe a one-time event or speaker to talk about this. But this combination here is going to be very unique within Sarita Wellness. And I've been in the process of genuinely building a program called the Bliss Method that intertwines these two things. I talked about the Bliss Method, I believe, starting last year, and I was starting in it, but it was not built yet. Rome was not built in a day. And I think the reason I was not able to build it with the impact that I'm able to now is because I wasn't living and breathing it fully. I wasn't a full nomad. I wasn't necessarily experiencing it in the way that I needed it to be, right? I was saying how my nervous system, I'm creating this based on what my nervous system has survived and integrated and implemented and live every single day. I wasn't fully living that. Even though it was part of me that I wanted to share, I didn't feel like I was fully able to come now full circle to share with you this work that I'm doing. And it gives me authority that I can share this information because I'm living and breathing it as a child free Latina woman of color, digital nomad manifesting her way across the United States. And so, yes, I'm in the process of creating this amazing program. This year has been a field study in my research, essentially, in creating this beautiful program. And it's a very pioneer work. There is no other program out there like this that integrates these two aspects, essentially activism and spirituality. And it's coming from a place where we get to deconstruct a lot of the things that we've learned and also harness our own sovereignty and power. I'm not quite finished with this program yet. However, I'm very excited to bring it into fruition into 2026. So make sure to get on the wait list, which I'll have in the show notes below, where you can get on the wait list of the first decolonized manifesting program out there, especially designed for people of color. And bonus, one of the other things that I had declared out there into the universe that I wanted to make happen, because I'm an activist at my core, is wanting to create the Bliss Method in cities that I travel to. The idea of this terrified me and still terrifies me, bringing grassroots efforts in this particular subject. I thought, oh, I'm this person that's just traveling city to city and doing these podcast episodes. People just see me. I'm kind of this person, that's living life, right? And doing what's important to me. And at the same time, I realize that community is imperative to me wherever I go. I have my community of medicine sisters that I do my prayer work with and we share a lot with. And I get to create communities wherever I go as well. And just recently, within the last couple weeks, I had set the intention. Here's manifestation in motion right here that I declared just recently. And I wrote this down in my journal. I believe this was for the new moon in Sagittarius. So it was literally last week, or when this podcast episode releases 2 weeks ago. And I had said, get me in front of the people where I can make my message stronger, where I can get more of the masses. That means connect me with the right people so I can create more impact with this message of this unique combination of the new manifesting paradigm and the old manifesting paradigm and decolonize manifesting, all the things that I've been talking about in this episode. And it's so fantastic. It's so amazing, kind of mind-blowing how quickly the universe delivers. In just a week or so, I met some new sisters in a women's circle. And so if you are in the Tri-City area, and my understanding is, again, I'm not from here, so I'm in Philadelphia. If you're in the Tri-City area in January, and that would be New Jersey, Philadelphia area, DC even, because that's like 3 hours away. So anywhere in this area, January 4th, I am holding the first ever decolonized manifesting course or group, gathering, essentially. I don't know what I'm going to call it. I literally agreed to this last night. And I'll be sharing with you in real time, in person, all the things, or the Bliss movement is, in a 2-hour some time frame. I don't know the name of it. I don't know all the details yet. However, if you send me an email at info@saritawellness.com, I will make sure to put you on the list so you know when the event is and where it is and all the details. Or if you send me a DM on my social media at Sarita Wellness, I'll make sure to send you the info. And if you can't make it, if you know a friend can make it, would love to see you there. Again, first decolonized manifesting class out there. Really excited to share with you all the things. And that's for me, is that I was scared and terrified in sharing this message. This is what's coming forth in 2026 for me. Leaving behind these old stories, leaving behind what no longer serves me as we shed this year, right? 2025, the year of the snake, as we go into this new year, the year 1, 2026, the year of the horse, fast moving. I am choosing to work through fear. I'm still scared about how this is going to come to fruition. The how is definitely not my responsibility. That is God, source, universe, higher power. But for me, it was the declaration and making things happen. And now I get to create. And so it's very exciting how the Bliss movement is coming together. It's going to be, my vision is that I want to take it city to city. While I finish creating the Bliss movement, the Bliss Method within the program, and then that program will open up in 2026. Very excited about what's to come. Lots of podcast guests for next year. So much happening. And I'm very, very excited for all the things. Again, make sure to follow me on social media at Sarita Wellness, all the details. And if you want the details for the January 4th in the Philadelphia area, it's going to be like downtown Philadelphia area. make sure to send me a DM. Thank you so much for being here on this very lengthy podcast episode while I share with you all the things that I've worked through and all the things that I've been learning in 2025 and the lessons and my vessel expanding, my heart expanding to be able to hold more, to be able to receive more. It's so exciting to be here with you and to share with you. I'm excited for this year to come. And I just wanted to say happy New Year's. We'll definitely see you again in 2026. As always, keep being the amazing you that you are. We'll see you next time. Take care. Hey, love. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you adored what you heard, it would mean the world to me if you took a moment to leave a review on the platform you are listening to this episode on. By doing this, you are helping my mission to impact other women with their healing journeys. If you aren't already following me on social media, make sure to connect with me at Sarita Wellness to get your weekly dose of inspiration. I can't wait to be with you in the next episode, but in the meantime, keep being the amazing you that you are.